Hey friends, how you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Kuvav, Daf 106 of Masechta Yevamos. Friends, we're almost getting close. We're like 2 weeks away from the end of Masechta Yevamos. Big stuff. Anyway, there's people yelling outside. There were people yelling outside this morning at like 5 in the morning. Well, let's go weiter. So we're going to talk about chalitza mutes, like mistaken chalitza, I guess. It's an interesting thing, I guess. And then we get up to a new Mishnah, the final Mishnah of the 12th parak of Masechta Yevamos, which kind of talks a little bit about, I guess, like how chalitza kind of works, I guess, like the order of things. Okay. We're going to start all the way at the top of Daf Kuvav Amud Aleph. Tani Rabbanan, the rabbis taught chalitza mutes. I don't know, I guess like maybe let's say this, a tricked chalitza, a chalitza like under certain assumptions. Let's see, we'll explain in a second what that is. Ksheira, it's kosher. Ezri chalitza mutes, what's a chalitza mutes? Well, if we say to the fellow, hey look, fellow, if you just do chalitza, then you'll be married to her. Rabbi Yochanan says, Anishone, but I'll tell you the following brisa. Whether he had intention to do chalitza and she did not, or whether she had intention but he did not, they both have to have intention to be doing chalitza. And you're saying over here where he's only doing chalitza, assuming that he's marrying her, that it's kosher? Obviously not. Rather, a chalitza mutes is that if we say to him, maybe he's talking about like a situation where he doesn't, maybe like an aguna kind of situation, like the guy doesn't really want to do chalitza for whatever reason, so we're like trying to like trying to like get him to do chalitza. So we say, look, brother, if you do chalitza, she's going to give you 200 zuz. Don't you want 200 zuz? And he's like, yeah, I do. Okay, great. I'm going to do chalitza. Then she doesn't actually have to give it to him. Because, as Rashi points out, that we base conditions, t'nais, stipulations, based on the t'nai of what's it called? Reuven, Gad, and Chatzishev, and Menashe. And over there, it could be done by way of an appointee, a shaliach, and chalitza cannot be done by, you can't make a shaliach to do chalitza, right? The Yevamos himself needs to do it. So therefore, this is not a place where conditions actually make a difference. And therefore, if he's only doing chalitza under the condition that he's going to get 200 zuz, the chalitza still counts even if he doesn't get the 200 zuz. Tanam Yachi, we also learn in a brayso like this, chalitza mutes ksheira. What's chalitza mutes? Kol she'omer chalotz la amana shetiten l'chol masayim zuz. And then if they say to him, do chalitza and you'll get 200 zuz, so even if we don't give him the 200 zuz, then still the chalitza is ksher. There was a story with a certain fella who had to do yibum with somebody who she was not interested in doing yibum with, and they said to the brother-in-law, Chalutz la'amana shetitein lecha masayim zuz, do chalitza and we'll give you 200 zuz. And the incident came before Reb Chia, and Reb Chia says it's a kosher chalitza. Also the comment of Reb Chia bar Abba. There was a fellow who came before Reb Chia bar Abba. Omar la, okay. Fine. So right, so this couple, this Yevamos came to Reb Chia bar Abba, and he was game to do yibum, she was not. So Reb Chia bar Abba says to her, Biti, Amodi, why don't you do yibum? Omrele, Ima, so her mother said, Yeshivasa zoy amidasa, look, the right thing in this case is for her not to do yibum. Omar la yodatle, and Reb Chia bar Abba, I believe, says to the mother, do you know this fellow? Omrele, and the mother says, yeah, I know this fellow. Mamonu hu dechazala. He saw that my daughter has money, v'kabay lemechle mina, and he just wants to spend her money. Omar la, Reb Chia bar Abba says to the Yevamos, Lo nichalach, Amar le lo. And he says to the Yevama, look, you don't want to do Yibum with this fellow? She says, no. Omar lei. So Reb Chia bar Abba says to the fellow, Chalotz lo v'chachat hakonsa. Okay, why don't you do chalitza with her, and by doing chalitza with her, you will then be marrying her, like Rish Lakish wanted to say. Now, levasu d'chalatzla, now after he did chalitza under this false pretext, or really this incorrect pretext, Omer lei, Reb Chia bar Abba then said, look, hashta minoch if afslala chalotzla chalitza me'al yisa ke'echi de tishrei le'alma. So Reb Chia bar Abba then said, look, you just did chalitza so that you will then be married to her. That's incorrect. You won't be married to her. But what you did accomplish through this chalitza, that you only did in order to be married to her, which isn't the case, which you're not going to be married to her. But what that did accomplish is that, what it did accomplish is that you're no longer allowed to do yibum with her. So why don't you just go ahead now and just do regular chalitza, so that she can then marry whoever she wants. Bas Chamud de Rav Papa Nafla Lifnei Yavam. The daughter of the father-in-law of Rav Papa needed to do yibum shein hagun la, and it wasn't right. She wasn't interested in doing it. Also, the comment of Abaye, she came before Abaye. Omar lei chalotz la uvchach ata konsa. And so the Yavam, the Yevama came before Abaye, and Abaye said to the Yavam, do chalitza, and by doing chalitza, you'll then be married to her. Amalei Rav Papa says to Abaye, lo savil amai lo hadam Rabbi Yochanan, don't you hold that which Rabbi Yochanan says, that if you say do chalitza, and then you'll be married, it doesn't, it's psula. Ve'ela heichi ema le. So then Abaye says to Papa, what should I say? So Omar le, so Papa says to Abaye, chalutz la menashetitin l'chom masayim zuz. Say, do chalitza, and then she'll pay you 200 zuz. So Abaye says, okay, fine. And that's what he told him. Levasu d'chalatzla, Omar la. So that's what they did. He said to the Yavam, do chalitza, and she'll pay you 200 zuz. And then that's what they did. And then Abaye says to the Yevama, he says, all right, now pay him 200 zuz. So Amalei zil havle. So Amalei, so Papa says to Abaye, Mishata nibach avdale. No, she was just like joking. Meaning she wasn't really saying that she was actually going to pay him 200 zuz. She was just basically doing it to get him to do chalitza, but she's not actually planning to pay him. Milotanya, after all, don't we learn in the Brisa, Harei shoya barech mi beis asur, and if you have a fellow who escaped from prison, and there was a river in front of him and a boat to take him across the river, and he says to the boat driver, told dinar ba'avireni, take a dinar, which is way overpriced, and take me across the river. In the end, the escapee the fugitive only needs to pay what the normal price for a boat ride would be. Alma Amalei Mishatani B'cha. So we see that he's able to say that he was just yanking his chain. Okay, fine. Hachanami here as well. Mishatani B'cha Amalei. I'm sorry, Mishatani B'cha. So here also, it's a situation of she'll just say, I was yanking your chain. I'm not really going to pay you 200 zuz. Amalei, Abaye says to Rav Papa, Avu Checha, where's your father? Amalei b'mata, he's out in the city. Ima Checha, where's your mother? Amalei b'mata, that she's out in the city. Yabu Eine v'shchivan, and then Abaye kind of killed them somehow. Basically, what Abaye was saying to Rav Papa was that clearly your parents are kind of wealthy enough that they're able to send you to yeshiva, and you have the luxury of being able to focus so much, and that's why you're so sharp, that's why you're so smart, that's how you're able to mamish just nail this sugya. And I guess, I don't exactly know how to explain this, but somehow Abaye was Abaye was like an orphan, right? He grew up in Rabbi's house. I don't know, somehow that didn't add up, the sort of contrast of Rav Papa being so smart, because Abaye was saying, you must be so smart because you never had to struggle a day in your life. You were just, your parents are out, have a lot of money, and you're just able to go to yeshiva and study all the time. And then somehow, for that reason, Abaye killed his parents. Alright, moving on. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Chalitza mutes kshera. So chalitza muteis, as we've been talking about, is kshera. Get mut'a pasul. But a get, right, if there's like a stipulation in a get, and that stipulation is not met, well then the get's going to be pasul in a writ of divorce. Chalitza meuses psula, a forced chalitza is pasul. Get meusa kosher, whereas a forced divorce document is kosher. Heichidami, how are we forcing in these cases? Either Amr rotza ani, if he says I'm interested in doing it, afilu chalitza nami. Well, chalitza also, if he says he's interested in doing chalitza, then it's a kosher chalitza. Vilo Amr rotza ani, and if he's just entirely forced and he never said that he's interested, get nami lo, then it doesn't work by a divorce document either. Hachi kamar. This is what it means. Chalitza muteis la'olam kosher. Look, when it comes to chalitza muteis, right, that is, do chalitza and she'll give you 200 zuz, that's always kosher. V'get mut'a la'olam pasul, and any get that has a stipulation that is not met is always going to be pasul. Now, chalitza mu'usa is v'get mu'usa. When it comes to forced chalitza and forced get, zimnin kosher, zimnin pasul. Look, sometimes it'll be kosher, sometimes it'll be pasul. Hada amar rotza ani, hada amar rotza ani. Depends if he ended up saying that he's interested in doing it or not. That if he's interested in doing it, so then it works by get and it works by chalitza. If he's not interested in doing, if he never says that he's interested in doing it, so then both by chalitza and by get, it's going to be pasul. The Tanya is we learn in the Brisa. Yaakov also, it says by a korban nidava, by voluntary korban, it says he brings it. Melamed shekofin also, that they can even force him. Yochel bal korcho, against his will. Tamalomer dertzono, it has to be with his will. Okay, so it doesn't mean force him and it's with his will. Kofin also, that we could force him until he says, okay, I want to. But he has to say that he wants to. And we see this by bills of divorce, that we force the fellow until he says that he's interested in granting a bill of divorce. Amar Rava says, Rava, Amar of Schora, Amar Rav Huna Cholzin, Afal Pisha in Makirin. Bezdin can preside over a chalitza even if they do not recognize, they don't know the Yavam and the Yevama, they don't even know their circumstance. They don't know who they are. They can preside over Me'un, a Ketana just saying, I'm out, to her husband, even if the Bezdin does not recognize them. Therefore, any witnesses who witnessed a Chalitza, so they cannot write up a document testifying that Chalitza was performed unless they actually know the Yavam and the Yevama and know that they really are a Yavam and Yevama and that it was a proper Chalitza, so then they can. But if they don't recognize them just because they witnessed it, they can't write up a document to attest to the Chalitza because Bezdin doesn't actually need to know who they are. Vein Kozvin get Me'un Elam Ke Makirin, and the same thing applies to a documenting Me'un, that Bezdin doesn't have to recognize the couple, and therefore any two witnesses who saw it can't document it because we don't really know much about the people. Fine. Where am I? Because we have to be concerned that maybe Bezdin is making a mistake. Virave and Rava Dide Omer, says Rava himself, right? We just quoted Rava in the name of Schor in the name of Rav Huna, but Rava himself says, Ein Cholzin Elim Kein Makirin, that no, Bezdin will only preside over Chalitza if they know the Yavam and the Yevama. V'memayin Elim Kein Makirin, and they're only going to preside over Me'un if they recognize the couple. Lefichach Kosvin Get Chalitza, Afal Pi Shein Makirin, V'Kosvin Get Me'un, Afal Pi Shein Makirin. That is why any witnesses who witnessed the Chalitza or the Me'un would be able to write a document attesting to the fact that they witnessed this Chalitza or this Me'un, because Bezdin does the research first and makes sure that it's really a proper case of Chalitza and Me'un. We don't have to be concerned about, this Bezdin making a mistake or any future Bezdin who might be reading this document making a mistake, because we know that, according to Rava, we know that Bezdin is going to make sure that this couple is a couple that should be doing Chalitza or Me'un. Final Mishnah in the 12th chapter of Masechta Yevamos. the top of Daf Kuvav Mud Beis Masnis in the Mishnah says mitzvahs chalitza. How does chalitza work? But who v'yevimto? So the Yavam and the Yevama come levezdin to bezdin. V'in masin lo etza ogenes lo, and they give him advice that is fit for him. Janine asked about this in WhatsApp the other day. Givaldige kasha that Janine asked that if they're coming to bezdin, didn't they already decide that they want to do chalitza? In which case, what do they have? What kind of advice do you have to give them? Right? As we learned the other day in the Gemara, that if there's a big age gap between them, they try to talk them out of it. So I don't know. Maybe it sounds like maybe if they weren't quite sure, right? We also learned in the same place where we learned that we give them advice. We also said that we summon them, that the judges summon him themselves. That's actually a good point as well. Maybe like they know about this couple and they want them to do chalitza or whatever, so maybe they summon them to the Beis Din, they bring them to the Beis Din and they explain, like, look, we think you should do chalitza, etc. So, yeah. Alright, fine. Okay, so they give him advice that is proper for him. Shenemar, as the Pasuk says, V'karulo ziknei iro, that the elders of his city call out to him, V'dibru elav, and they speak to him. V'omeres, and she says, okay, and as we're basically, she has to read, as we've been learning over the past few days, that there's three parts of chalitza, right? There's the removing of the shoe, there's the spitting on the floor, and there's reading verses. There's going to be certain verses that she reads and certain verses that he reads. So, V'hi omeres, and she reads, Mein yivami la'akim la'achiv shem b'Yisrael, that my Yavam over here is refusing to establish a name for his brother in Israel. Lo'ava yabmi, he doesn't want to do yibum with me. V'hu omer, and then he says, the verse, Lo chafatz lekachta, I don't want to take her. V'lashon hakodesh omrim, and they would say in lashon hakodesh, v'nigsha yivim to elav leinia zikenim, and then the Yevama, the Pasuk says that the Yevama comes forth to him in the eyes of the judges, and removes his shoe from his foot, and she spits in front of him, and the spit needs to be seen to the judges, and then she replies, and she says, so shall be done to the fellow, who does not build the house of his brother, and that's where they would end with the reading. And when Reb Hurkanus read beneath the some kind of a tree in Kfar Eitam, V'gomer Kola Parsha, and he read the entire Parsha, so then I guess from that point on they would read the entire Parsha. V'nikra Shmo B'Yisrael B'Schalot Zanal, and his name will be called in Israel, in the house of the removed shoe. Mitzvah b'dayanin v'lo mitzvah b'talmidim. It's a mitzvah for the judges to say it, but not necessarily for the students who are there to say that. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda mitzvah al kol ha'omdim sham lo mechalot zanal, that it's a mitzvah for everybody who's standing over there to say the one with the removed shoe. Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Yehuda, mitzvah's chalitza, that the mitzvah of chalitza kor up. So she reads, okay, v'korei, and then he reads, right, as we saw in the Mishnah, right? It says, right, she reads, Mein yivami la'akim la'achiv shem b'Yisrael lo v'yabmi, and then he says, Lo chafatzi lekachta, okay, v'choletzes, and then she removes the shoe from his foot, v'rokika, and then she spits, v'kora, and then she reads a second time, right, as it said, V'antzav rama kochi osulisha shalivnez beis achiv, so there's that. So she reads, he reads, she removes the shoe, she spits, she reads again. Alright. My Kamash Malon, what's the Chiddush of Rav Yehuda? Masnisani. We just learned in our Mishnah. Why does Rav Yehuda need to say that this is how we do things? The Mishnah said it. How Kamash Malon, what Rav Yehuda is teaching us is mitzvah hachi, that it's a mitzvah, right? It says, right, if we look, it says, Amar Rav Yehuda, mitzvahs chalitza, right? It's a mitzvah, this is the best way to do it. But if you did it out of order, it's also okay. Learn in a brisa. Whether they first did chalitza and then spitting, or first if she spat and then removed the shoe, whatever you did is fine, even if you do it out of order. Amar Abai says, Abai, Haiman de makre get chalitza lo likre Ledida lo lechudei ve'avayabmi lechudei, that somebody who's reading out the verses of Chalitza should not read, should not break up the meaning. That right, it says, where am I? Lo likre ledida, they should not read to her. Lo lechudei ve'avayabmi lechudei. Right, the pasuk says lo avayabmi. Right, that she says, what does she say? Mein yivami lahakim lachav shem b'Yisrael lo avayabmi. So make sure that phrase is read in one go, lo avayabmi, and not lo avayabmi, because that implies like, no, actually he does want to do yibum, right? So therefore, demashma avayabmi, that would imply like, actually he does want to do yibum. So lo avayabmi, rather you have to read it all together, that no, he does not. He's not interested in doing yibum. But likre ledidei, lo lechudei, chafatzti lechudei, and also when they read to him, do not break up the lo and the chafatzti. Don't say, right, let's go weiter, demashma chafatzti the kachta, which implies, like, no, chafatzti, I do want to do yibum, but the point is, lo chafatzti the kachta. No, the point is that what he's saying is that he's not interested in marrying her. Rava Amar Afsuki Milsa, Afsuki Milsa Leislan Ba. Rava says, meh. Rava says, look, you're talking about where to put the space, where to take a breath, where to stop for air. Meh. Doesn't make a difference. Rav Ashi Ashkele Rav Kahana, the Komitztaru Makrila Lo Avayabmi. Rav Ashi found that Rav Kahana would be makbid to say Lo Avayabmi in one phrase and not break it up in any other way. Omer Le, Lo Sovele Mar Loha de Rave. So Rav Ashi says to Rav Kahana, but don't you hold of Rave that it's just, it's just breaking up, it's not super important to make sure you break it up the right way. So Rav Kahana says, yeah, but even Rava admits that by lo avayabmi, you have to read it as one phrase, because if you say lo avayabmi, the lo could be referring to what came before it, right? What does the pasuk say? That it says, I was looking for Amar mein yavam lachiv shem b'Yisrael lo avayabmi. That it could be referring to like the things that came before it, as opposed to wait, what? Where am I? Wait, now I lost myself. So Modirava below Ava Yabmi. Right, so this is when, right, this is what she says, right? The Yevamos says, Lo Ava Yabmi, that, right, that my brother-in-law is not interested in doing yibum with me. And so even Rava would be makbid there, because since she says kind of two things, right? Meaning she says at the beginning of the pasuk, right? It says Ma'in Yevami lakim la'achiv shem b'Yisrael, and if you break up the lo in the wrong way, it could say lo, meaning like he doesn't actually refuse, actually he does do it. So therefore, when it comes to her, where there's like more things that she's saying, and it could be referring to earlier things, it can be confusing. So therefore, you actually, even Rava would admit that you would have to say lo avayabmi, and you cannot break that up in a different way. Amar Abai says, Abai, Haiman dechosav gita de chalitzta. If somebody's writing a document documenting the chalitza, lichtov hachi, he should write in the following way: akrinua ledida, that we read to her min ma'in me'in yevami ad avayabmi, that we read to her from me'in yevami until avayabmi. I.e., don't write out the entire verse. Rather, don't, only write sort of like 2 words at a time, because we can't write, parshias of the Torah, especially without like sirtut, without like adding lines to the cloth. So since we're just writing words of the Torah, better to paraphrase. Vakrinu ledide, and then we read to him min lo ad lekachta, but not read in the entire pasuk. Vakrinua ledida, and then we read to her min kacha v'ad chalutzana. Marzutra misarte duchsev v'chasev l'chula parshasa. Marzutra, on the other end, would add lines to the cloth, right? He would make it a kosher cloth, like the cloth that you could be able to write Torah on. And then he would just write the entire verses, he wouldn't paraphrase it. Maskifla Mar Bar Idi, but Mar Bar Idi asks on Marzutra, but I thought you're not allowed to write random parshas of a Torah. For example, right, there's a shaila, can you write, parshas of a Torah for kids to learn from? And the answer apparently is no. And therefore you can't just write random parshas of the Torah. But nonetheless, halacha is like Marzutra, that you'd be able to add lines to the cloth and then write the verses in full, and that is okay, because this isn't, because when you're writing, let's say for kids to learn, so then it's as if you're like writing a parsha in the Torah and you're writing it out of context, and that's not okay. But this is really just documenting what happened, and that would be okay. Omer Abai, says Abai, Rokika v'kolatzo aruach. Oh, if she spat and then there was a wind and the wind blew it away, lo asasav lo klum, so it's irrelevant. My time, how come? V'yarka b'fanav, but because it says you have to spit in front of him, and if she spits and the wind just blows it away, then she didn't spit in front of him. Hilkachu aruch v'hi gutza. If he's very tall and she's very short, kolatzeo aruach ika b'fanav. So then, even if he spits and then he spits and then the wind blows it away, so then it's okay. Wait, what? No, I'm sorry. Right, if he is tall and she is short and she spits and the wind blows it up in front of his face, so then that's okay. Hiaruka v'hu goats. If she is very tall and he is very short, so ba'inan adamati lahadeape v'hadu azu. The spit needs to first be pulled down by gravity until it gets to a level with his face, and then the wind can blow it away at that point. Amar Rava, says Rava, achla tuma v'raksa, achla gargishta v'raksa. If she ate garlic and then spat, if she ate clay and then spat, these are things that will induce saliva, but the saliva is not coming from her. It's coming from the clay or the garlic. That doesn't work. My time, how come? It has to be her spit, not spit induced by garlic or clay. Vileka, and that wouldn't be the case in the garlic and the clay. Says Rava, says Rava that the judges have to be able to see the spit. Ki nafik mipuma di Yevama, when it comes, they have to see the spit when it comes out of her mouth. The Chsev is a pasuk say le'enei azikenim v'yarka. It's just a spit before the eyes of the judges. And his name will be called among Israel the house of the removed shoe. Mitzvah b'dayanim v'lo b'talmidim. That the mitzvah is with the judges, not with the students. Tani, we're learning the price. So Amr Yehuda says, that one time we were sitting before Reb Tarfon, and the Yevama came to do chalitza v'amar lanu. Reb Tarfon said to us, Anu kulchem, everybody answer, chalutz hana'al, chalutz hana'al, chalutz hana'al, hajun Allah, mitzvahs chalitza. So we see that Reb Tarfon advised everybody there that they should all say, chalutz hana'al. Sounds like 3 times. Well, that was daf kuf vav Masechta Yevamos. We learned about a chalitza mut'es. So machlokas between Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Rish Lakish said that it's when they say, look, if you do chalitza, then you'll be married to her, which is not true. And Rabbi Yochanan says it's when they say to him that if you do chalitza, you will pay your money. And even if they don't pay money, it's still acceptable. That's a chalitza mutes, and we say that it is kesher. We also talked about a chalitza me'usa and a get me'usa. When the get or the chalitza is forced, we say it's only acceptable if he at some point says rotza ani, that I'm interested in doing it. And then we got to the final mishnah of the 12th chapter of Masechta Yevamos, where we kind of went through the order of chalitza, that first she reads a verse, then he reads a verse, then she removes the shoe, then she spits, and then she reads another verse, and then everybody says Beis Chalutz Hanal, Beis Chalutz Hanal. That was daf Beis Chalutz Hanal the 3rd time, I think. That was daf Kuf Vav Masechta Yevamos. Hope you enjoyed. Peace out.